Hi, thank you so much for clicking this video. This is Batok with Ola and my name is Mujola Olua, and on this episode I want to talk about recitals are very important clauses, or it's a clause, a recital clause. It's a clause, a very important clause in an agreement. Specifically want to talk about land agreements. I've done a video on this channel, a podcast session where I had an expert talk to us so much about land transactions and how to go legal and how to secure your interest and ensure that you're not being scammed in Nigeria. So please watch that video. It's a podcast broken into two. Check the podcast session and watch it. But today I just want to briefly talk about recitals. This is very good for law school students because knowing the clauses that you have in a land agreement is very important for your studies and for your exams, and it's important for lawyers as well to refamiliarize themselves with recitals or the recital clause. The recital clause is usually in a land agreement between the parties clause and the consideration clause. Parties clause is the name of the parties, and consideration clause is the clause that talks about payment, for value. But the recital talks about the history of the property in question, whether it's a house or a piece of land. The recital is very important because it traces the history of the land, how it was derived, where it's coming from, and where it is now going. It's important to pay attention to how you draft your recital because it can save or land your client in trouble in the future. A recital should talk about who had the land originally, how they passed it to who passed it to who passed it to who is now desirous of passing it to the buyer or the prospective buyer. Very important. If there's been a court case on the land, the recital should cover it. Say that, this land was subject to litigation when it was in this person's possession, or when this person had ownership of it, it was subject to litigation in suit number so, and judgment was delivered in it on the so date, and the judgment was in favor of the owner, who then consequently sold it to this person, who is now selling it to this person. Very important. When issues arise about a property, the easiest way is to look at the recital, look at how it was derived, and then go and trace the history so that you would find out where the problem is coming from. For instance, if someone that was not a rightful seller has sold, you can find a pointer in the recital, or if there's an issue that arises, you can always go back to the recital that this person claimed to be the lawful owner, or they inherited it from their father, and then you can trace and trace and trace. Very important. I'm going to read to you a few examples of recitals in property transactions, landed property transactions in Nigeria, and maybe to give you better perspective. But if you're a law student or if you're a layman, just know that recitals talk about the history of the land, where it has been, how it has passed from hand to hand, and where it is now going, and it's a very important clause. Recital 1 for a land agreement. Whereas, recital start with whereas. Whereas the vendor, as the absolute owner of one plot of land situated lying and being at plot 7, Apampa village off New Ibadan, Oyo Expressway, Oyo State, Nigeria. The vendor, as the absolute and beneficial owner, has agreed to transfer his full and exclusive right of ownership and enjoyment of the said land to the purchaser, and the vendor agreed to sell, and the purchaser has agreed to buy the said land free from all encumbrances. The vendor has assured the purchaser that the said parcel of land is free from encumbrance. That's the recital that I prepared for this client in this particular land transaction. Let me read to you another recital for another property that I did not prepare. Whereas the shop herein described as shop number 82 ATT Igbanladogi Market, Sabo, Ikorodu, which is intended to be assigned to the purchaser and which is herein assigned to the purchaser, forms part of a large market shopping center designed, managed and supervised by the Ikorodu Local Government Council, belonged to the within named vendor by virtue of allocation to her late husband, Alhaji S.A. Ajanle Koko, and legal change of ownership by the Ikorodu Local Government, vid approval letter reference number ILG/AO/44/428. dated 10th March 2014 attached to this agreement, whereas the within named vendor has agreed with the within named purchaser to assign all her interests and rights in the said shop 82 ATT to the within named purchaser, free from any encumbrance and conditions, but subject to the rules and regulations governing market stalls ownership in Lagos State in general, particularly in the Ikorodu Local Government Council. Can you see how clear that is? So you can literally trace the history of that property, that shop. So if you're in doubt, you go back to the recital. That's how it's supposed to be. I know that lawyers can have the limitation of not having adequate information supplied to them by their client, and that's okay. If your client is not paying you to do searches and to confirm all the history and all of that, whatever information they supply to you as the history of the land is certainly what you're going to use, which you would see in that first one. But there's another one I prepared that was much more detailed. I'm going to try to look for it and then read it out to you. So if the client is actually paying you for all the searches and all the confirmations and all of that, you can go to all lengths to ensure that you trace the proper history of the land or the property and you put it in the recital. Very important. It will save the client in the future, and it will help people who are looking to confirm the history of the land and all of that to get accurate facts. But whatever the client supplies at the end of the day is what you put in the recital. So this is another recital that I have made for a client some years ago. So I said that whereas under and by virtue of the native law and custom of Yoruba land, members of the Ajanle Koko family of Ikare Akoko are the absolute owners in possession of a vast parcel of land, which include the plot described in this agreement and its schedule. So there's a schedule. I made a schedule to this agreement. That's why I'm just referring to the schedule. It makes your work very easy and very neat. And all the names that I'm using in the agreements that I've read and that I'm still reading are fictitious, because I try to conceal the identity of the real owners and parties involved. So further, I said, by an outright sale, the family's title in the one plot described in this agreement and its schedule as measuring one plot 100 feet by 50 feet each, lying situate and being at block XXV, plot 20, was transferred to the transferor in consideration of the sum of 600,000 naira only, written also in figures, in April 2013 by the family head and principal members of the Ajanle Koko family as required by law. The transferor has agreed to transfer the parcel of land measuring one plot 100 feet by 50 feet each, lying situate and being at block XXV, plot 20, Ajanle Koko, Ikare Akoko, and the transferee has agreed to take same subject to the terms and conditions hereinafter appearing. The transferor has assured the transferee that the said parcel of land is free from encumbrance. So that's what I have in this particular recital. You can see that what I've done is trace that by native law and custom, this is a family land and it's a large expanse of land. Out of that, they sold one plot to this seller way back, a few years ago. And today, the seller is now trying to sell it to the buyer, for so I talked about the amount they sold it to him, because the client in this case furnished me with the receipt of the sale from the original family to the transferor, that is to his own seller now. So it gets tricky, when you say seller, buyer, transferor, transferee, all those things can get mixed up. But it's important for you to trace the history of the property properly in your recital. So that's what I want to talk to you about in this video. Make sure you watch it again and try to do a sample, for instance, if you're a law student, and if you're a lawyer, please put it to mind. I know you've probably been doing it already, but just remind yourself that recitals are very important, and you can always include all necessary details about where the land has been and where it is going. That's all I have for you in this video. I will see you in my very next video. Don't forget to subscribe to this.